Well, my name is Hernan Lopez from LLama games. No, it's not true, but I mean, I should have this name registered anyway. From LLama games, I'm going to give this lecture about challenge of designing a narrative-oriented game. Chattanooga or something like that will be the thing. Who am I? I'm a speaker, as you can see right now. I'm speaking. I'm CEO of LLama Games, which is a studio with 14 years old of making games. We started making games on Flash. Poor Flash is there, but we keep making games. We then switch to PC and then to consoles and so on and so forth. I'm also a board member of ADVA, the Argentinian Video Game Developers Association, which is an association that tried to make the industry grow in Argentina, as the name says. I'm a game designer professor at Universidad Provincial de Cordoba. I don't know, I mean, it will be University Provincial of Cordoba. And designer of Darkestville Castle, which is a point-and-click adventure game, which the resume will be like the son of Monkey Island 3 with The Nightmare Before Christmas. And Unusual Finding, which is another point-and-click adventure game, which is very 80s oriented. I'm a terrible, terrible magician, as you are going to check right now. You have the cards here. It's really stupid, but it's interesting to be able to produce cards out of nowhere. But then again, in a COVID era, it's not healthy at all. So, at the end, thanks for the claps. I will do other magic tricks, but then again, I mean, I will have to choose a card, whatever. It's kind of complicated. But for the people who make questions, the first three got a balloon animal or a sword, you can choose. So just think about questions to make later. This is Darkestville Castle. As you can see, it's pretty much, it's really Nightmare Before Christmas. And this is Unusual Finding, which, as I told you, it's the latest point-and-click adventure game that we made, which is all about the 80s and all about nostalgia. So we make the game is pixel art. Let me check. Yeah, the game is pixel art, as you can see there. But in the promos and everything, you have these posters that are really 80s on style. The game also has a comic because it was funded through Kickstarter. So one of the perks was a comic. And we also did the comics with the same format as Watchman, which is also an 80s comic. We tried to keep everything inside the 80s. The graphics, the music is synthwave. And we went the extra mile to find, to get the rights, the license of You Spin Me Right Like a Record from Dead or Alive, which is like the most 80s thing that you can get. If you don't know who are the guys that sing You Spin Me Round Round. Yeah, I'm going to sing this. It's terrible, but yeah, you can't go lower, right? You cross that threshold. But the thing is, we licensed that because we want to make the game the more 80s, more nostalgia-oriented that you can go. So now let's go to the lecture that we are all here to talk about. With this narrative-oriented games, what I define as a narrative-oriented game is a game with the core driver, the key feature, or game mechanics in general are heavily linked to the game narrative. So you are selling the game narrative as a unique selling point. And it's in a spectrum. It's not like, this is a narrative-oriented game, and suddenly, because it has this mechanic, it's not. It's more like it has a lot of gray area to grow. Inside, of course, you have point-and-click games by nature are narrative-oriented game. Sim dates by nature are narrative-oriented games. But you can have a Firewatch, which is a walk simulator, which is also a narrative. You can have a survival horror, which is also can be a narrative-oriented. So you have these gray areas where you can define those too. So let's start with the beginning of making a game, which is creating a good premise. Sometimes this is really difficult. But the thing that you have to consider when making a premise for a narrative-oriented game is no matter what it is, because it can be like a lot of stuff. Can be the father trying to connect with his son, can be a romantic thing, can be a survival story, can be a lot of stuff. But the premise has to resonate with your audience. And the thing is, you know your audience. When you are making a game, you're making a game for someone. It's not like you are making a game for everyone, or you can say that you are making a game for you because you are seeing yourself as the primary example of your demographic that you are making. But sometimes you don't have the luxury of putting yourself as the audience that you are targeting. So, if you are doing something for someone else that it's not known as good as yourself, what I will advise to create a starting point, a good premise, is start consuming what your audience, what the people that you're making the game for is consuming. And it's not this limited by just play the games that they are playing. Of course, when you're defining an audience for video games, you define what they consumed previously. So you say, okay, I'm making a point-and-click game. I'm making a game for people that played these other point-and-click games. Or a hidden object game. I'm making this hidden object game for people that play already these other kind of hidden object games. That's good. But these people just don't consume that kind of medium, and that's all. They also watch television, watch Netflix series, see the news. They have fears, they have things that they are trying to achieve. They are at some point in their lives. So if you consume what they consume, you're going to understand much better what they are coming from, and you're going to be able to do something that reflects maybe what, as I told before, what they fear, what they love, what they want to see on something that inspires them too. So consume what they are consuming, not to copy, but to know more your audience. Also, when you're creating a premise for a game, consider the game mechanics that the game has. Because maybe you are making a game from scratch, and in that way you can dictate what mechanics the game are going to have, and that will be like the ideal scenario, because then you are like shaping everything to have like the same tone, right? But if you are called in the middle of a development cycle, and sometimes it's going to happen to you probably, then you have to add a narrative from outside, and to make everything go in the same direction, please check the game mechanics of your game. And if you are going to do a narrative that is slow-paced, you probably will have to have a gameplay in general that also is slow-paced. If it makes no sense to switch or not consider all the game mechanics that the game has that stick with the narrative of your game. And they go to the next point, which is look for consistency. Narrative should show in every point, in every aspect of a game, right? It's not just the story alone. It's also, it has to like align the mood, right? The game mechanics, the art style, the music. That's where, when I was talking, well, we are making this 80s game that is all about nostalgia. It's all about loving the past. It's also about growing up, which is the state that the people who like point-and-click games probably was in the 80s, or at least the people that they see grew when they were at that point. So everything there aligns, which you have pixel art, you have music that goes to that era, you have a narrative that takes a lot of inspiration from movies like The Goonies, from Batteries Not Included, Terminator, They Live, all this 80s stuff. And when you are making your narrative for your game, try to align everything, art style, with mood, with music, with mechanics, with the narrative itself, which is not only what it's written, but every detail, the user interface, everything is talking to the player, telling something to them. So try to look for consistency. That is super, super important. And in that note, it's something that is really, really, really important if you are going to cast voice actors, and if you do, and I recommend you to do, because a lot of players are lazy and they don't want to read a lot of stuff if there's a lot of stuff to do, or if the voice acting is super cool, because you can, if you are making, for instance, a walk simulator or whatever, the player can be doing stuff, can be moving around while narrative is going in the background. So voice acting is something that I highly recommend. The only thing that I will say is take time to proper cast your actors. If you are going to add voice acting, consider that is expensive. I mean, it's not. It doesn't have to be expensive in what the voice actor in the voice actor cost necessary. But what is going to be a lot of expensive is in the time that it's going to take for your team to properly, if you want to do it right, to properly find the actor, the right actor, take the time to properly make the world known that you're looking for a voice actor. Do a big search. Have a lot of people to choose from, because that way you're going to find the people that you need for that character. Don't stick with the first 3 people or 4 people that send you an okay-ish resume or an okay-ish portfolio. Go for the voice of that character that you have in mind. Otherwise, it's not going to sound well. That takes time. Plan this ahead of time, because it consumes a lot of time. Do many takes and direct your actors. That's super, super important. It's really, really important thing to do is direct your actor. Take the time. Just don't send the lines and just wait that they just send you the lines and okay, they are good. You just have a Skype call with them. Just hit record. You do the other cues. You explain to them what's the situation, what is the mood, because otherwise you are going to end up with a loosey product, and then it's not going to resonate well with anyone if they don't sound as they should. Now, about writing. When you're writing your characters for this narrative game that we are thinking about, one challenge that is going to rise, is something that you have to consider, is, and you can take advantage of, is to know the difference between one-dimensional character, two-dimensional characters, and three-dimensional characters. And these 3 definitions and these 3 types of characters have their purpose. It's not like one-dimensional characters necessarily are better than three-dimensional characters. They have their purpose, and they are there. They exist for a reason. But to define a bit, borrowing word from Alan Moore, one-dimensional characters in, for instance, comics or in earlier video games, doesn't have much depth in the narrative, is at the beginning you have a good guy and a bad guy, and the good guy is good because he is good, and everything that is going to be okay, and he's going to be on their right moral side. And the bad guy is bad because he's bad. You have like a meme that is super, I'm not sure if you saw it, where it's Spider-Man fighting a lizard man. He says, oh, you can cure cancer with this technology. And the lizard man says, no, but I don't want to cure cancer. I want to turn people into lizards. And it makes no sense. I mean, why this guy want to turn everyone into lizard? Because he's bad, and that's it. Then you have two-dimensional characters, which were represented by Spider-Man, for instance, where you have, again, a guy who is good. He's good because he's good, and that's it, and he's going to be morally consistent with goodness, whatever the people who is writing at the point is. But he has a quirk. He has something a little bit different, something that is not just good and perfect as Superman, which Superman he's good, he's handsome, he's tall, he shoots laser from their eyes, he does everything perfect, and then he is successful. But Spider-Man has problems in the job, he can't talk to girls, and he is a teenager. So these quirks that Stanley added are what's the second dimension that we're talking. It's not just good, but it's good with some problems on it. And then you have three-dimensional characters, which are characters that are more human-like, with their own agenda. They are doing something because they want something, and they have a relationship with someone and a different relationship with someone else, and they walk more in they can be good and three-dimensional, but gray areas exist and gray areas apply, and everything happens because the writer on a three-dimensional character took the time to set up a bias, something that is really deep about how this character thinks and how it works. And that's something that is important. Sometimes we can rely on one-dimensional characters or in stereotypes. It's not bad to have a stereotypical character there, because stereotypes are great for saving time. Sometimes you don't have, I don't know, like 3 hours to develop a character. You need the character to be understand like right away. So in that sense, a stereotypical character like the bad dude is, okay, this is the bad dude. Good, I understand it, I get it right away. The nerd, here comes the nerd. Okay, he's all about knowledge and he has all the stereotypical nerd stuff. So this character exists if you don't have time. Now, if you have time and you want to make them breathe and you want to develop characters, then go for more dimensionals than that. But that, again, doesn't mean that it's bad to produce the other ones. It's all about the time that you have. The good thing that you can do if you don't have much time is make a character which isn't a stereotype, then add some difference there, and then it's going to be remembered much better. That is going to be a two-dimensional character. So to properly make a three-dimensional character, you have to know the character's motivations. Let me see how I'm in time. Oh, my. Know your character's motivations, and do a character sheet. I mean, just a sheet on Google Sheets, where you just write what he likes, what he fears, or what's the relations toward this, how he thinks political about some stuff or some others. So then, if you know all that stuff, then when you're writing, it's going to be much easier. Now, about fun theory, I don't know if you're familiar with fun theory. It's basically animals play, because when they play, they are like practicing what they are going to do in adult life. I don't know if you have a dog, you give him something and he starts to shake it, playing it. That's because dogs kill by grabbing a rabbit and shaking it until the bones are crushed. Yeah, I know, lovely. And then they play with that because they are going to need those. Humans do the same. That's why we like video games a lot, because video games we are good at watching patterns, and video games present patterns in a way which is interesting and easy to master. So since we see patterns, we like that, because that's the thing that makes us like a good, successful animal. And the same applies to stories. If you are writing a story, the people is going to see a pattern on it. And if the pattern is like the same as they saw before, then it's not going to be as interesting as if there is a pattern, then change a bit. So that's why it's necessary and interesting, and make your game interesting, to add some misdirection and some change on the story that you're telling. Because if you are like, what's the main complaint about Avatar? Oh, it's like Pocahontas. So people watch something and they start to like find things that look like. If you give a twist, if you change the tone at some point, if you say something, do something in your game that the player is not expecting, suddenly you're going to get reactions like this one. That's the thing that we make on Unusual Findings. The games start like super light-hearted, and this is their skit, that they saw an alien crash land near their home, and they are going to watch it, and it's super kid-friendly, and suddenly at some point the alien appear and stab from the back a cop, and it's not a jump scare, it's just he walks and stab him. So it's not like they were scared, but you get this reaction of every YouTuber that has like the cam put on them. Everyone do this when they got stabbed, because the direction, the game and the story was seemingly aiming, the tone shifted to now they are murders, now people is dying, now there are consequences that are permanent. This is not as kid-friendly as it was looking for. So you have to do, like when you're doing a magic trick, you do preparation, misdirection, effect. You prepare the atmosphere to look in some direction, you do the misdirection so people think that it's going toward one direction, then you do something that changes that, and people is going to be remembering your story or that part of the game particularly. Another thing that you should do, check time, write no matter what. Sometimes you're going to get blocked while writing your game, the narrative of your game. How do you overcome writer block? Just write, okay? Just write whatever thing it's come in your mind, even if it doesn't make sense. You keep the conversation of this character talking gibberish, whatever, and then at some point it's going to click in your head, and it's going to start to make sense, and they are going to start to talk normally, and then you go back, delete everything that makes no sense, and then start connecting that part with the other. But the thing basically is your brain saying, I don't want to work, and I don't want to start pushing that rock, which is writing, but if you push it anyways, it's going to start to work. And another thing is, when you're writing, please don't forget to do notes. Please don't forget that there are implicit narrative. It's not a radio telenovela, right? It doesn't have to say, oh my God, you stabbed in my eye. If the player just saw that he got stabbed in the eye, he doesn't have to say the actions that are going there. And that is a problem that it's much more common than you think that you're going to find. It's like since you are not looking at it, since it's not written, or you just read it in the story. But that's not, you should do footnotes and notes to what should happen or what is the scenario that is going on. So there is implicit narrative which is more rich, and you can focus on what is important and not repeat what the player it's already seen. About drivers, remember there is a framework which is called Octalysis, which see what people drives to play video game, what people make them come back to play video games after they start playing. And there is one driver, which is epic meaning and calling, which is the feeling that the player is contributing to something which is bigger than themselves. It doesn't need that it has to be saving, I don't know, like a reign or a nation or whatever. It has to be something which sounds bigger or contribution to a major cause. And that make people engage with games. And the only thing that can give this feeling, the only piece in a game that can give this is narrative. So don't use that, because it can be a really good way to keep people interested on your game. When stakes start to come higher and higher, it can start really humble, this story, and can be humble, but in a way it can change stuff in a grander scale. About content. In narrative games, content tends to be expensive, because in a platformer you have the assets, right? And then you have a good level designer, and then you design levels around it. But for narrative games, every piece is unique. It's not like you can repeat the same structure over and over, or the same enemy over and over. Every character has its own talk. Every item has its own reason to be. So creating content in general lines, it's expensive and is unique, because you have to think, why is the reason behind that existing there from a narrative point of view? And if there is some new stuff, and it has to be some new stuff all the time, it's going to be that item and this graphic for this, and that's it. So, on the other hand, players expect many hours of gameplay, like if it was some kind of regular platformer or other thing. So you have that problem there, but there are some tricks that you can use to produce longer experience and more hours of gameplay without having to have like, I don't know, 2,000 or 3,000 pages of text, right? So some tricks that you can use to extend the period of time is add mini games. For instance, you have this game which is Coffee Talk, which I love. You can like people come and talk, and it's totally narrative oriented. And what you can do is they ask you a coffee, and you do the coffee, and then you can play with the latte art and you take a lot of time doing that. And it's not like you can do a bad coffee or you lose if you don't do the coffee right. It's just, it's there, you play, you spend time doing it, you love it. That's the idea. I mean, don't play mini games that are boring, don't play things that are... I'm not telling that you just could take the player out to do something that it's not hooked with the narrative of the game. Making coffee in a coffee shop, it makes totally sense. But that is a great way to like extend a game. Also, if you have a secondary mechanic, like, I don't know, exploration for instance. Also, a great trick is using scenarios in a clever way. That's also something that all level designers should know. It's like you can produce, with just one scenario, you can produce, if you use it right, more experience that you paid for. For instance, what we did in Darkest Steel Castle is the first chapter of the game happened all in Darkest Steel, which is a town. And since we didn't have much budget to do it, and we think it was also a good idea, the secondary chapter also happened in Darkest Steel. But to make it interesting, because if you don't produce more content for the players, I already know this is boring. What we did is that now the town is full of demons. The streets are on fire, and there are a few new locations available. So it's the same scenario, but it has slightly changed. So and have new stuff on it, and have new things to see. So you don't have to redraw everything, but you have new content and more content. And also a good way to add more time of gameplay is add exploration. So the player has some treats to go around, to navigate, to try this, to try that, to enter to a place, and that way it felt earned that they enter a new location, but at the same time they expend time trying to do so. So about replayability on narrative games, there is a problem in YouTubers showing narrative content. I mean, we love that YouTubers play our games, don't get me wrong. We love that they share that we are making a game and they are enjoying it, and that's how it is. But the thing is, once you know how a puzzle is solved, you can't forget it. I mean, that happened with narrative-oriented games. You can't read a book twice. I mean, you can. Everyone have read a book once or twice, but you have to wait time. So you can potentially, and a lot of people do that, is just watch the guy play, and you don't play the game, and you just know the story. If you are hooked by the story and just the story, then why play the game. It's not like you have to prove that you can jump this gap in a platformer. It's not that you have to prove that you can defeat all these characters in a fighting game. It's just a story, and you already saw how it's solved. Then what's your challenge? There's no challenge. So we have to find ways to make the game unique in some way, so the player has an incentive to, okay, I know this game, but if I play, something is going to be different. Because otherwise, why I will play a story that I already know? So there is where branching narratives appear out of the window. The thing is, branching narrative is expensive, because then suddenly there is a lot of content that you're doing that player maybe never played, that it's just there for giving this sense of, okay, now I have to try it and it's going to change. So if you do, like in the first graph there, this kind of like crazy branching narrative, when you have these options, and these options branch to another and branch to another and are all unique, it's going to be super expensive. Then these have this other, which is my favorite type of branching narrative, when things branch, but then go back to a same point, then branch again, then go to, again, the same point, and then in the ending of the game, things change depending of an evaluation of the things that you, of the points that you take there. But in that way, it's much less expensive to produce, since you don't have to do all the different scenarios. You end with 31 different scenarios there, and doing this, you just expand then to the same point to start, and then you just focus on endings, and that's it. About agency, think about this. There is almost no agency in classic writer. I mean, what you see on movies, you can't change movies. When you read a book, you can't change the outcome of the book. Except, I'm not sure if you are familiar with Choose Your Own Adventure, or Elige tu propia aventura in Spanish. There was some books with, if you choose this, go to page number 3. But if you choose to, I'm not sure, are you familiar with this? Yeah, good. Well, so in this kind of game, you have some kind of agency, but in regular, you don't have. But how then you give agency to a player? Well, you can focus agency on the face. So the player is depending on how she decides, he moves the story forward quicker or no, or the decisions that he takes, if they affect again, then you have some branching, or at least fake branching narrative, when you let the player choose between this and that, and then is the same, with no consequence. Then about rhythm in a game, and agency might clash, because sometimes you leave the player try to solve a puzzle, and they can't, because the puzzle is too hard. So is they're going to be stuck at some point in the game, and you don't want them to be stuck, because then the rhythm of the story is lost. The player start to get annoyed. The player stop playing the game, and if they don't finish the game, if they don't feel satisfied with the experience that they are living, then you lose as game designer. So beware that players not necessarily are looking difficulty spikes when looking for a story. They are looking for a story to drive them away. Then how do we try to make these spikes of difficulty don't appear there, other than testing and trying to do everything smooth? Because sometimes players don't find the logic or the way to solve the puzzle that we were presented, because they are players that are better at some things and worse, bad at some other. So you, for instance, if you add minigames, you let them skip the minigame if they don't like it. Then if the game is short, well, you skip everything. Also give the tools to the players to use their wheels. For instance, you can, and it's used in Deponia, and we also do it in Darkestville Castle, is this, you have this button here that you played, and you can see all the things that are interactive there. So if players, they didn't find where they had to interact, they play that, and they can see the things that are interactive. Or the thing that you can do is when players find a wall, a difficulty spike that they can't cross, they're just going to go for the guide on the internet. It's not like they are, okay, they got frustrated, and now I have to leave the game and check elsewhere. So it's not a bad idea to have tools that the player can use as a guide to solve the puzzle. Let them choose. If they don't want to choose it, okay, they played fair and square like an old school game. But if they feel that they're frustrated and want to pick what is the solution, give them the solution just there. Also something important, tutorial. What tutorial? Never ever have a tutorial inside a narrative game or in any game in general. But if the player see that there is a tutorial, you are taking them out of the immersion that you are trying to do. When you are doing a narrative-oriented game, you want the player to feel inside of the story, not inside of a game that if they press start and select and whatever, make them start in a really, really, really small, controlled environment, when the only way to solve things is if they know the features that you want them to learn, and guide them over with the story that makes sense to be at that point in that way, right? But please never do a tutorial. About localization, if you are going to write, and you're probably going to do a lot, be aware that localization, it's expensive, but it's 100% necessary. Not everyone speaks Polish or English or Spanish. So you're going to need to localize to expand your market. So be aware of that. So prepare everything in a way which is easier to later localize and program your game with tools that allow you to localize the game. But also when you're writing, please keep in mind that wordplay doesn't translate very well. So try to keep that at a minimum, so the joke like this one doesn't work in Spanish at all. It doesn't work in Chinese. It only works on English. Maybe it works in Polish. I have no idea. But the thing is, be aware that the wordplay is troublesome when localization. And if there are rhymes, also, if the localization is only subtitles, then it can work. But then if it's voice acting, then it's going to be problematic, because one thing that rhymes in some language doesn't rhyme in other. Again, if it's subtitles, good. If it's voice acting, it's troublesome. And about testing, you need to test a lot to be able to smooth these difficulty spikes. But there is a hard thing, which is narrative games are not easy, are almost impossible to test in an event, because you are not in the mood. When you are playing a narrative game, usually you are yourself, nothing else to do, nothing to bother you. It's just you and the experience. And in an event, everyone is talking to you, and there is a lot of sound and people coming, and you don't have 1 hour to play. You just play a game for 10 minutes, and you have to go check all the things. So it's really hard to test narrative games in an event. So you have to do demos and then release it to some people. And if YouTubers can watch it, it will be like ideal. And the last thing that I can say is make narrative games. I mean, I have talked about all the troubles and all the things that could go wrong, but making narrative games is so amazing. I mean, it's so good to be able to tell a story that you want to tell, to make other people experience things that they were not expecting, to love characters that they don't exist in real life. It's people made out of imagination, and now they are there, and they influence other people's lives. and they make people love your work, and you're giving, I mean, I think everyone would like to create stuff, like to give the world a little bit of what you take from other authors that you love, from other games that you love, from other stories that you love. So making narrative games is super wholesome. It's great when you see people laugh at the jokes that you write, to be scared of the things that you try to make them feel scared of, to make them connect with the characters that you want them to connect. It's really lovely to see someone play your games and have a great time. So what I would say is like, make narrative games is amazing. And if you are going to make narrative games, then you are amazing too. And that's it. That's the presentation. If you have questions, please come by. The first question, have a dog or something like that. That's it. You are amazing. So, if you have questions, let me check if I have balloon animals. The question can't be, why do you have balloon animals? Why do you have balloons in the first place? So you want a dog or a sword? Okay.
I just want to...
Yeah, you tell me, sir.
I want to ask if you played the game Paradigm. Have you heard about it? It's an adventure point-and-click game, Paradigm, by Jacob Janerka.
I don't play.
Because it has a tutorial, but it's very short and very funny, and I think it's like... I know you are very against the tutorials, but I think it's...
But if the tutorial is fun, and it's integrated as some kind of like joke, or something that is like, hey, look, this is what we're doing, right? It's like we are aware of this thing. Then it's well integrated, okay? But if it's just a message down that say, press forward to walk, press spacebar to open the door, and why don't you just put me inside of a room with just a door, and the only thing that I can do is push buttons until I know that, okay, now I know, spacebar is to open. That's why it's going.
Yeah, so because in this game the character says he forgot how to exist.
Okay, that sounds fun.
And then he has a tumor in his head which is talking, and this talking tumor is telling him how to do things. And that.
Okay, but sounds pretty.
But check out this game.
Okay,
Paradigm.
so I will check it, and this dog, this yellow dog, is for you, sir. Give me just a minute. I was just squeezing it. Do you like dogs? Okay. So, oh my God. Let me try to make this. Oh my God, it's ugly. It's an ugly dog. Oh, thank you. You're talking about me or the dog? Sorry? Oh, thanks. Oh, thank you. I'm really happy that you like. Yeah, it's a lovely horse shark. And let me give you this little doggy. Come on, dog, bark. Oh, there it is. I'm so happy to see you. Look, he's shaking his tail. There you go, sir. Yeah, that's it?
Question.
Yeah. Question.
So, just real quick, who do you imagine is your perfect tester before you even go to like beta testing? Is there anyone who can help you out with testing?
The ideal tester, what I will love to, but it's super magical unicorn, is a developer with a lot more experience than me that does the same. If I can get like Ron Gilbert to play my game and give me feedback, I will be humbled and I will love it. It will be like the perfect thing because it does games that are like what the games that I am trying to make. So that will be like the ideal. Now, the other thing, which is you are not going to find a lot of developers with all this thing, but the ideal will be like what you imagine as your audience. Okay, you think that this YouTuber, for instance, is the guy who is around 40 years old, who like this kind of nerdy thing, and would then make them play and see how they react and see what feedback they can give you, because they are the ideal player that you're aiming.
And could they also be less biased than the developers who've been working?
Oh, yeah. No, you can't do that. It's a lie. what can you can't do the test yourself. I mean, other than to look for bugs. And even that is kind of like a shady business. But of course you can't. I mean, you are a master of your game. You are not going to see difficulty curves. You already know everything.
Yeah, but like you yourself, but other developers who have similar experience to yours.
Ah, you say other developers.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's perfect to show to other developers and to listen what they have to say. What you always have to do when you showing to everyone your game is you let them play the game, then listen to whatever they have to say. You never explain anything. You're just there, and even if they is telling you the thing that you think is the more bullshit thing ever, that is like, but you didn't play it well. Whatever thing that you are going to respond, you shut up and you listen, and you thanks for the feedback that you're receiving. Thank you, because at the moment that you open your mouth to justify whatever thing, then the other people is going to stop giving you honest feedback. So you thank you, yes, what else? Then maybe he's wrong about everything and the other people tell you exactly the opposite. But if you start to see a pattern, then there is a pattern here. And maybe they don't, again, this is something that happened, that we were showcasing a game, and people say it was for another kind of game. There was a guy who was checking, and they came and say, oh, well, this game lacks jumping. And there was a game dev here, a game designer there, and say, well, okay, so people is complaining that they need to jump, but if we add jumping, the game breaks because the game is not meant to have the jump ability. So, what if instead of, because people is complaining, because when they are moving, they don't know what to do. They want to go jumping. But I'm going to break everything. So what they did is, why don't we add jars in the middle that you can break, and maybe you find a power-up or some health or something. And they did that and then, at night, because they were guys who worked really hard. And at night they did, the next day they showcased the game again. No one complained about jumping. So sometimes the feedback that they give you, they present you a solution that it's not necessarily ideal for your game, but they showcase, pointing you a problem. So the patterns you see, the problems you see, you note them, and then find the solution that fits best for your game. Yeah, come on. Thanks for your question. Oh, your dog, you want a dog?
No, last question.
Okay. Another two questions and no dogs. Okay.
Can you imagine teenagers being harsh testers or potentially good testers because of their lack of bias?
If the game is for teenagers, then they're the best tester that you can have. It's not that they are like the best per se. If the demographic that you're pointing at, then please, teenagers, play the game. But if it's a game for people 40 years old and teenager, then it even may be illegal. So,
Thank you.
Okay, now you're welcome. Okay? Yeah, sure. You want a dog?
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure.
First of all, hola.
It's going to be pink.
Hola, señor López, ¿cómo está?
Muy bien. Yeah, you speak Spanish.
Muy poco.
Thank you.
We'll switch to English. My name is Milos. I'm a game designer, and I started as a narrative game designer.
Yeah, cool.
And basically, I grew up on LucasArts games and Sierra games, and I
Love
how
it.
you mentioned Ron Gilbert and Tim Schafer. They're my heroes.
Yeah, we all love them.
Yeah. But this question has nothing to do with them. Basically, I just wanted to ask you with games like Limbo and Inside,
Yeah.
which are side-scrollers.
Yes.
You can call them atmospheric side-scrollers.
Yeah.
But would you call those games narrative games?
Again, see,
Basically, the question is, can you leave it to the interpretation of the player to kind of play this game which has no words,
Well, yeah.
just an ambient?
yeah, for the story. I think they fit. Like Journey is a platformer, but at the same time, it's a narrative game because it's the key driver is to know the story. That's why I say when I was talking that there is a lot of gray area there because it's not like it's not as obvious as a point-and-click game. It's just a story, but since it's a driver, since it's a selling point, then you have to be careful about the narrative on all the stuff, and probably you're going to check writing, you're going to check atmosphere. I mean, all games should check writing and atmosphere and blah, 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 but those games are, for me, it enter in the spectrum, if you say so.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me give you your dog before you leave.
No,
Okay.
while you're making somebody else go.
Okay, that's it.
Very short one, okay? So I presume you work as a narrative designer for a long time. How do you think the narrative games change over the past years when you have now the new generation has a shorter span of attention, and narrative games, you know, they need you to spend hours upon hours to go through the whole story.
Yeah. I get what you're telling me. It's like, but the thing is, first, people that consume narrative-oriented games usually are older. That's true, but they are not dying. So that's good. I think I think that younger people also is getting older, and they are going to start appreciating more stories. And they maybe consume different things that we used to consume. I mean, they consume more maybe simulator games that are also narrative-oriented games, but they are not the classic point-and-click games that you used to consider as this is the pinnacle of narrative games. And there are also, as he asked about games that maybe it's a platformer that has, like, I don't know, like, you know Nihilubra? Well, Nihilubra is a lovely platformer with a lot of deep narrative and a voice which is narrating stuff, and it is a really good narrative game, but at the same time, it's a platformer. I think I usually have an optimistic approach towards, because, I mean, narrative is something as old as humanity. I mean, you see paintings, and that's what you call history and prehistory, right? So it's not going to be over, it's only going to grow. That's what I think. You want a dog too? Yeah. Oh, sure, it's pink again, a lot of pink.
Okay, we are running out of time.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll do the dog there.
Mr. Hernan Lopez from